And it is great to see people taking sustainability more seriously. What's been really great to see is the collaboration around operational issues. So all the work that Ad Net Zero does around ad production and media planning, for example. But obviously, for those of us that watched Cannes from afar this year, and as Greenpeace reminded us with their protests, we just can't look at advertising through rosé tinted glasses anymore. And according to the Purpose Disruptors new report that was updated this week, through the products that we promote, the advertising industry has grown its contribution to every single citizen's carbon footprint from 28% in 2019 to 32% in 2020. And that increase of 22 million metric tonnes of CO2 in those 3 years is the equivalent to running an extra 9 coal-fired power plants for a year. So it's massive. But it's not all doom and gloom. What's really positive is that the industry that we work in really does have the power to encourage people to adopt low carbon lifestyles. And we really do have to seize that opportunity before it's too late.
So, the purpose of this session is really to talk about, what are the things that we're doing, and give an example of what The Guardian is doing, which hopefully will sort of be helpful for other companies when they're thinking about what action they can take. So, every company is approaching action in slightly different ways. At The Guardian, obviously, given the platform that we have and our ability to talk to, millions of readers every day, we've used the thing that we call the climate pledge as a way to try and encapsulate the steps that we're taking, and also communicate that in a, quite a powerful and digestible way to readers and to advertisers and clients alike. So this is our climate pledge from this year, and this builds on commitments that we've been making since 2019, and every year we update those. So, we've been making progress towards these 6 areas since then. So I'll just run through them quickly. So, first of all, we really, it always comes back to our journalism. So we've said we will continue our long-standing record of powerful environmental reporting known around the world for its quality and independence. We will report on how environmental collapse is already affecting people worldwide. We'll publish up-to-date global indicators that point to the urgency of the situation, to try and help cut through the noise, or maybe the rhetoric, which sort of seeks to kind of downplay what's happening. And then as a business, we will eliminate 2/3 of emissions by 2030. We'll seek to decouple our business and finances from fossil fuel companies, and we will continue to be transparent in our progress. Now, as Sustainability Director, I can't take any credit at all for our brilliant environmental journalism, but what I do spend a lot of my time on is particularly that number 4 on that list, in terms of trying to measure and understand what our emissions are, and then what action we can take to reduce them. So, I think here the things that I would just touch on, which I think are pertinent to a lot of people at this session, is really looking at digital emissions and understanding our digital footprint. That's the growth area of our business, and it's also actually really hard to measure. It's really kind of an emerging area of practice. That there are sort of standards out there, and we've worked with the environmental consultancy that does our carbon auditing. We've worked with academics to try and understand that better, but it's definitely a sort of evolving picture, and we have to keep expanding that to reflect changes in our product portfolio. So, for example, this year, given that we've seen so much growth in our podcast and our audio output, that's a new thing that we've added to our measurement from this year, and then kind of gone back and tried to kind of estimate that historical data for that as well. And then the area that we're looking into a lot more now is the emissions caused by the supply chain when serving digital advertising on our platform. And we're having a lot of conversations in the industry about how to tackle that. Certainly complex, because it relies a lot on transparency across the supply chain of digital advertising. But we're in some good discussions with, people who are part of Ad Net Zero. We've been talking to IAB Europe about their sustainability standards, having discussions with Group M about their decarbonisation framework. And I think there's a lot of traction now in the industry, but it still feels like we're in quite early stages of, everybody across that supply chain being, even just being capable of measuring and sort of supplying the data that we're going to need to do that.
So I'm just going to go back to our journalism for a moment. And like Julie, I can't claim to have much influence over that. I wrote about fashion for many years, but not more recently. So, but I think the reason that we want to mention it is because as an ad industry, we understand all about the power of communication. And I think that having that power to change customers' minds is really important. And as The Guardian, we know that the biggest impact we can have on attitudes is towards climate crisis is through our journalism. And I mean, I absolutely love saying this stat. We have been fighting the climate crisis on the pages of The Guardian since 1863. We had a birthday recently, we turned 200, and we looked back in the archives and we were delighted to find this report carried out by the physicist John Tyndall into his latest findings about how greenhouse gases block solar radiation from being reflected back into space. Fast forward 200 years, and we now publish a piece of environmental journalism every 3 hours. So in 2021, we published more than 3,000 environment stories that were read by tens of millions of people around the world. In total, readers spent a combined 538 years reading this work. And rather than just kind of reporting on the climate crisis from a scientific point of view, that's obviously can be sometimes complicated and hard to relate to, we really do put real people's lives at the heart of our reporting. And that's why we don't just leave the environmental reporting to our environment journalists. Obviously, they do most of it. But really, we want to explain within the pages or the digital pages of The Guardian how the climate crisis is affecting every single aspect of daily life, from food to fashion to art to agriculture. We know that people really want to understand how to take action and how to live more sustainably, so we weave that through. So anytime there's a new trend on the fashion desk, we will always give options of how you can buy that secondhand or kind of rent it. So we kind of give a sustainable option there. In food, our cooks will often flag how to veganize a meal, something like that. And in technology, the sustainable use of resources is an important strand, and our product reviews often, not often, they always include a sustainability ranking.
So you can see, oh, sorry, Imogen, still you.
Oh, sorry. I think my slides have mixed up. I'm trying to move on from journalism, but I think these slides have got out of order. I think we're missing our B Corp slide, I think.
Okay, yeah, fine. I think we are, but that's fine. So I'll just touch on that. So, as some people may know, The Guardian became a B Corp in 2019, and it's a question that we get asked about a lot in the industry, and I think there's a lot of interest, particularly in the advertising sector, about B Corp and what it means. So I just wanted to kind of explain a little bit about why we did that and what it means for us. So, as Imogen's just explained, we take a really broad approach to how we think about environmental sustainability in our journalism. And that's in addition to all the coverage that we do of sort of much broader kind of social issues. So therefore, it's really important that we hold ourselves to account as a company and think quite broadly about how we assess our own performance. And I know we're at the Ad Net Zero conference, but hitting an emissions reduction target is very important. But it's just one lens to view our own performance by as a company, and it doesn't necessarily capture everything we think about when it comes to the sort of the type of company or the type of employer that we want to be. So, yeah, in 2019, we became the first major media organisation to become a B Corp anywhere in the world, and we're really proud to have taken that step. It's a certification given to for-profit businesses that meet high standards of verified social and environmental performance. I'd say it's still much more widely known in the US, but certainly growing rapidly in the UK and in Europe. And I think getting a lot more traction in terms of consumers understanding and what it is. And in practice, certifying means that you have to answer questions and sort of demonstrate your standards and performance across a really wide range of things. So everything from corporate governance standards to workers' rights, benefits, environmental policies and actions. Everything down to what's your policy for electronic waste. It's really, really broad. And actually really rigorous and really robust, and has given us a kind of really great understanding of where we're doing well, but also where we can do better. And the reason that we did that was because, I think when as a company you want to talk about purpose or talk about sustainability, it's quite easy to cherry pick a few initiatives that you're doing and just talk about those, but it's quite difficult to really understand whether the things you're doing are the most important, or whether there might be whole areas that you're missing. We looked at some different standards. We could have set our own, but would have felt a bit like marking our own homework. We could have kind of picked a whole range of quite technical standards across different areas, but we felt that sort of doesn't really help you communicate to your customers what you're doing. And then for us, B Corp has definitely done that. We think it's increasingly, we see now adverts sort of on the tube where brands are kind of championing their B Corp certification, and I think it's becoming quite a nice kind of shorthand for people to understand what it means to be a purposeful business, and what sort of standard that entails.
So, as Julie mentioned, like rather than kind of cherry picking initiatives, like what does it really mean to embed purpose in your decision making, rather than sort of separate things? And a really good example of how we've done that at the Guardian was our decision to stop taking fossil fuel advertising in 2020. More specifically, we banned ads from fossil fuel extractors, and lots of people asked us how we got to that actually, because it's we and how our teams felt about it, because at the Guardian we are a mixed revenue model, so we rely on subscriptions, but we also have a significant input from advertising. But it was becoming increasingly jarring to be advertising something that was also directly contributing to the climate crisis. We knew it was something that our readers cared about. They told us all the time. And at the same time, we were extending our coverage of the environment in the newsroom as well. And as Bill Bernbach once said, it's not until it costs you money. So we took that decision knowing that that would make our lives a tiny bit harder in the short term in terms of the revenue that we lost, but we really do stand by that. And I think a lot of people wonder, like, what did our sales team think about that? Because obviously we're making their targets so much harder to hit. But actually, we found it's been a really, really positive thing for our sales team, because we're really galvanised around the idea of this purpose. It's sort of it really fits in with our values, and it's something that we're really proud of. And I think when you see the likes of some viral videos online where somebody has been exposing where their work has been perhaps inconsistent, it is really nice for us to at the Guardian as a sales team to really be able to back that and stand behind it. As you've seen on the screen for ages, because I got the slides wrong, there was a really positive reaction as well from environmental campaigners. It's really great to see that Leonardo DiCaprio liked it and Greta Thunberg. We did hope that it might inspire other organisations to follow suit and take kind of quite hard action in preventing the climate crisis. But as yet, we remain the only news brand in the entire world that has rejected ads from fossil fuel extractors. We're very proud of that, but we would like other people to join us, I think. Which brings me on to the next slide, which is because of our credentials at The Guardian, we are attractive to advertisers who would really like to get a sustainability message out there, but maybe they're not quite there yet in terms of what they're actually doing. And as we've seen recently, there are growing concerns in the ad industry about falsely promoting green credentials to capitalise on that sort of changing of customer preferences towards something that is a sort of greener alternative. We've seen the ASA recently calling for stricter regulation on those green claims. And there was some research that found that current terminology, customers just find it really difficult to understand. Like, what does carbon neutral actually mean? And what does net zero actually mean? And there were no fixed rules for how businesses should achieve these goals. Obviously, some adverts recently have been found foul of the sort of the right lines by the ASA. And we found that, it's nobody's perfect, but brands should be able to back up their claims with really robust, credible, and up-to-date evidence. And what we do as an organisation is that we do try and when we work with a client who has a sustainable message, we kind of really work with them to understand what they're actually doing and to avoid that whole issue of greenwashing. We have rejected lots of content campaigns actually which overreach or they're just inconsistent with regard to green issues.
Thanks, Imogen. So we're going to wrap up here, so we've got time for a couple of questions at the end. But just to summarise what we talked about, when we think about being a sustainable media organisation, a sustainable publisher, what do we mean? Really, first and foremost, it's about the journalism and telling the story of what's happening in the world. It's about the action that we take. To take measurement, but also then it's about the measurement, but then also the action that we take on the back of that with our staff and with our partners. And I suppose our sort of final word to you is, it's easy to come along and speak at these events and make it sound like everything you're doing is brilliant, but I always say a commitment to sustainability, it requires effort. It's a lot of effort and it requires a bit of humility. No one's going to get it right all the time. And the deeper that you go into these topics, the more you learn, and then the more difficult questions you have to answer, and the more, maybe the more complex it gets. But that's the work that we've all got to do. So thanks very much for listening, and we'll be happy to take any questions that people have got.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Julie and Imogen. That was absolutely brilliant. I just want to remind everyone that we're using Slido, so if you do have questions while we have Julie and Imogen, do share them with me. The first one that I've got coming through for you, they're saying, great work on the FF ad ban. Are you planning to take next steps to ban advertising for high carbon sponsors, including airlines and car companies? I don't know which one of you would like to take that. Maybe Imogen?
Yeah, I'll take that one. That is a question that we often hear at The Guardian from our readers. They are not shy of telling us what they think, which is brilliant. We love that relationship we have with our readers. Obviously, we know that some of our readers would like us to go further, and it is very difficult to know where you would kind of draw the line. As yet, we haven't got plans to take it further, but it is something that is kind of reviewed a lot. I think certainly in terms of content campaigns where it's longer form adverts, we are very careful about the kind of the types of work we'll do there, because we can't be inconsistent, because it doesn't work for The Guardian, it doesn't work for our readers, and it actually doesn't work for the brand that wants to work with us either. It's kind of it's not always the best way.
Thank you, Imogen. Julie, is there anything you want to add?
No, I would just add on that. One of the things that we're involved in, which we referenced in the presentation, is this work by Purpose Disruptors, which is really about trying to measure and quantify what's the impact of the products that you're advertising, whether that's as an agency or a media owner, and then how do you try to reduce the impact of those over time. So that's definitely something that we're looking into, and I think those sorts of industries that I mentioned will be part of that.
Yeah, and I think there is a lot of interest in what you're doing, because clearly, as you've mentioned, in terms of your industry, you're leading the way. And another question we have is, was it easy or clear to define which brands are actually fossil fuel businesses? Is that quite difficult or quite straightforward?
Julie, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, I think the stance that we've taken so far is about fossil fuel extractors. So actually, to us, that's quite clear. So whether they are advertising something to do with renewable energy, or whether or something to do with fossil fuels, it's anyone who is a fossil fuel extractor. That's who we would exclude. And I suppose the reason, I know some people would say, well, if those businesses are trying to transition, then shouldn't you help them? But really, for us, it was a point of principle. Also reflecting the fact that a lot of those companies in that industry have actually been part of sort of greenwashing or climate denial, and trying to kind of slow the pace of progress over decades, really. And that was, anyone who watched the BBC documentary recently, kind of Big Oil versus the World, I think that explained it quite well, the stance. So it was, those are the ones that we would exclude.
Thank you. And we've just got a short amount of time left. So one last question really for both of you. What would you say, given what you're doing at the moment, and you're honest that it's a journey, that cheesy phrase, but what are you most proud of so far of the work that you're doing at The Guardian? Imogen, maybe you first.
This is really hard to answer without making anybody else sound bad. And I want to be collegiate, because we do have to work together as an industry, but it does feel, it makes me enormously proud to be able to say, no, we don't take that advertising when, and it's consistent with our editorial, because I think for us as such a kind of like a brand that people expect us to be good on these issues, it just feels really consistent, and I'm really proud to be able to say, no, we don't take those ads.
Thank you. And Julie?
Yeah, I definitely agree with Imogen, and I would say also our B Corp certification, because again, we were the first major media company anywhere in the world to do that, and I feel like that sort of was us again taking a stand and saying what was important for us, and also putting all the work in behind it, behind the scenes to actually make that happen.